Hi, this is Dan Pastorini, and you're listening to The Grilling Truth.
Welcome to the Grilling Truth CFL Legend Show. I'm your host, Mike Goodpaster. Right now I want to welcome in my co-host, Brian Schmidt.
Hey, how's everybody doing today?
It's really hot out here, Brian. I don't know about where you're at, but it's like 100 degrees today.
Oh, I'm in Texas, so you know how hot it is here.
Yeah, but you got that dry heat, isn't it?
Yeah, that's what we'll go with, dry heat.
Yeah, 100 degrees is still 100 degrees. But our guest today was a two-time Coach of the Year in the CFL, won an Arena Bowl with the Iowa Barnstormers. Help me welcome to the Grilling Truth CFL Legend Show, Coach John Gregory.
Hey, Mike, how you doing? It's
all right. Great to have you on the show today.
It's cold here down in Beaufort, South Carolina. It's only 95. So.
Oh, well, heck, I would rather have that than where I'm at right now, though. Plus, we've got humidity, which is like 100% also, so that's always good.
You know, we battle that, too.
All right, so let's start at the beginning of your coaching career. Your first job, Iowa Central Community College. You were an assistant coach and AD. You want to talk a little bit about your time there and the work starting in a completely new program?
I did. That was my first job in recruiting. And, the junior college was just starting the football program, and I was fortunate enough to get on with a coach named Paul Shute, and who was a heck of a coach. And he was busy with other things, so I got to do all the recruiting. And, my first year I came up with this guy that was a pretty good player. I'm trying to think of his name right now. I'll get to that. But anyway, he was a first-round draft choice.
John Matuzak?
John Matuzak. God, how can I forget that name? John Matuzak. Well, you're good, Mike.
That was Brian on that one, but we're sitting here. The second question is about John Matuzak. So.
Well, the interesting thing about this kid, this is how I'm like. This is about after I'd been recruiting for maybe a month, and I got a tip from Iowa State University about this kid named John Matuzak who lived in Oak Creek, Wisconsin. And I go, geez, he said, you should go up and see him. And I'm going, that's kind of a long drive from Fort Dodge, Iowa. He said, it'll be worth it. So I drove up there, and I walked up to his front door, and I knocked on the door. And it was one of those small houses where they have the steps, and you can't get up on the same level as the entrance into the house. So I'm down a step from him, and I see this big shadow come up to the door, and he opens the door, and I'm looking up like I almost broke my neck leaning back, almost fell off the stairs. He was 6'7", 267 pounds. This is high school senior. He had run in the 100-yard dash and track meet the day before. He ran a 10.600, and he threw the discus 212 yards or feet, and that was a high school world record. So that wasn't too bad a recruit. He was a fantastic football player.
Yeah, it's funny because when I was looking all that up, and I saw that name, and I never realized that he was the number one draft pick, and coming from high, I never realized that until I read that. I thought it was pretty interesting.
Yeah, it was. I felt like a pretty good recruiter.
Yeah, that's the way to start your career.
Oh my God, yeah.
Talk a little bit about your time. I know from there you went to South Dakota State and was a head coach there. Talk a little bit about your time there, because I know your '79 team I know was 9-2, and I think that was like the winningest season they've had or they had at that time.
Yep.
So talk a little bit about your time there and building that program.
Well, it was interesting. I went from the junior college to there, and I went up there as the defensive coordinator my first year, and I was just a young kid. I was only 27, I think, years old, and I went up there. I liked the university. It was really a nice place and whatever, and it seemed like a good place. I had a couple other offers wanted us to be the freshman coach at Iowa State, and but I picked South Dakota State because I was going to be a coordinator there. And so anyway, South Dakota State had not had a winning season in 12 years. And when I took over as the head coach the next year, and it was just one of those schools that's kind of out in the middle of no place, and there's not a lot of great football players in South Dakota. But I was unaware of all those things. I was a head coach at a state university, and I hired some young coaches that were pretty good coaches. In fact, they were very good. And we played the first year, and at the end of the season, with one game left, we were 5-5. So now we are going to play. We got to win the last game to have the first winning season they'd had in 12 years. And Mike and Brian, we played the United States Marine Corps in their final game that the Marines played, and it was at Quantico. And they had professional football players on their team. They were absolutely loaded for bear. And they had just lost to Alabama the week before, 7-0. So I'm going. I had my young kid was an offensive line, and there was a defensive lineman who had been an NFL player, and he was. This guy was really, really good football player. And my assistant coach he was a grad assistant. He was in his first year, and he said, John, I looked at the film. We cannot block him. I said, well, I'll tell you what let's do. Let's sucker block him. He goes, what do you mean? I go, well, okay. We'll have the guard drop back and work outside, and he'll react to that, and then we're going to trap him. Well, in the first quarter, we scored 3 touchdowns on that trap play with a slot back on an old wing T counter play, basically, and we end up winning the game. And I mean, it was one of those things of all the victories that I've had in my life, that has to, other than the Grey Cup in '89, had to be one of the biggest wins I ever had.
All right, so you talked a little bit. I mean, they hadn't won in 12 years. You went to Saskatchewan later. They hadn't been to the playoffs in 11 years. When you take over a school like
guy. I was called one of those fix-it guys. Come in.
Yeah. So I mean, what do you do when you go to a program and the program's been so bad for so long? What are like the first couple things you do to change the culture or the attitude at the school? The first thing that I do is I meet with the team and I try to make it a fun thing. I try to make playing and coaching and I try to make it a fun thing. I try to make them feel comfortable. I try to make them feel relaxed and joke around a little bit and be easygoing, but really hard working. And you never try to be as a head coach, buddy with them, but but they know they can count on you. So that's kind of the process that I always take, is just go in and say, we got to get this thing corrected, and it is correctable. It's correctable with hard playing and good coaching. So that's kind of the way I go about it. All right, Brian.
Well, the kind of the next part, I know you had been in Northern 'Iowa for a year as an offensive coordinator, but then you went to the Winnipeg Blue Bombers as an O-line coach, and you were there, I believe, for like 6 seasons. And in '84, you won a Grey Cup there. Had a record-breaking rushing attack. Talk a little bit about that '84 season, and just talk about winning a Grey Cup there and the things that you did with that offensive line, because you look at the CFL as a passing league, but I mean, to have a rushing attack that you had that year was pretty amazing.
Well, when I went in there, I went in there, and there's a guy named Cal Murphy, and I really didn't know Cal, and he kind of called me out of the blue. I was kind of expecting to be able to join Ray Yock in that new league, whatever it was called at that point in time, with the Federals. I was on my vacation, spring break with my wife and kids down in Missouri, and I had this. Although it wasn't like now when they can get a hold of you, and some lady, a secretary from the hotel we were staying in, came out and said, "You're supposed to call Cal Murphy in Winnipeg." I'm going, Cal Murphy? Yeah, I think he was the coach in Edmonton. Yeah. So I called him and he said, "Hey John, I'd like to interview you for the offensive line job." And I'm for those who don't know me, I'm 5'7" and I'm 190 pounds. So I'm going, okay, fine. So I had worked with a guy named Kent Stevenson, who you may not know, was an offensive line coach for Pittsburgh Steelers, and he had also played at University of Northern Iowa. So we had worked on offensive line techniques, and we had a couple techniques I thought that were quite revolutionary. And anyway, he had heard about that, went up and met with him, and this is kind of a long story, but I think it's really an important story. I met with Cal, and we talked about X's and O's and all that kind of stuff. And so he says, "I like you, John. You got the job." And I go, "Wow, I got my first professional football job. Wow." So he takes me to where my office will be, and so I kind of look around a little bit, and I go, "Geez, I forgot to ask him what this coach's schedule is." And Kent Stevenson, who was with Pittsburgh Steelers, I can be honest with you, he hated his job, as do a lot of the NFL guys, assistant coaches, because of the work and having to stay all night and sleep in their offices and all that kind of stuff. So I go, I better talk to him about what my schedule is going to be. So I go in and I say, "Hey, Cal, I just heard some of the, rumors about, coaching in the pros, and I don't mind the work, so I don't care." I said, I'll be the first one into work every morning. And John, how late do you expect us to stay at night? He said, if you come in and you do your routine, you come in and get your stuff ready for your offensive lineman, get whatever you got to do in the practice that day, and then we'll have a special teams meeting, offensive meeting, defensive meeting, team meeting, and then we'll have lunch, and then we'll go about 2:30. We'll practice, and then come in, and if you need to catch any lineman or whatever, talk to him about practice, and and he said, "That's about it." And I go, "Well, how long do you expect us to stay at night?" And he says, after you do all that stuff each day, and if you're prepared on all that stuff," he goes, "and if you have to come back at night and work, I hired the wrong guy because you're not smart enough to have the job." Well,
yeah, and then in 1986, you were named the head coach of the Saskatchewan Roughriders. You immediately ended an 11-year playoff drought, won Coach of the Year. You want to talk a little bit about turning that team around and maybe the difference between turning around a professional team and a college team?
Well, I have to, kind of refer back, and I was going to mention that with the Bombers too. That I decided. And you ask about, running the ball and pass protecting, whatever. I believe in really simplicity in plays and in organization. And so my process there was to do this, I wanted to keep the offensive line rules and regulations simple so no one ever made an error. That was my key. I think the quarterback coach and the offensive coordinator put any plays he wanted into the game plan, but no line changes. So everybody knows what to do. It's a very simple system. And I think you talked to Dieter Brock. Did you have him on, Mike?
Yeah, we had Dieter on a couple weeks ago.
Yeah, well, Dieter was part of that. And so, I just kept it simple with him, and we only ran 3 or 4 plays on the running game. We ran what we call the search system, And Mike, you're up there, and I'm sure everybody knows what the search system is. And where we had Tom Clements after we traded Dieter to Hamilton, and he just read it. We just read it, and we've done that since we've done that reading since 1984. Reading the ends. Everybody thinks the read option is new. No, we've been doing it since then, and so anyway, when I went to Saskatchewan, same way. Keep it very simple. As I can tell you, in the Grey Cup in 1989, we had 7 pass plays and 4 running plays for a game plan. That's it.
Yeah, I think Brian is getting ready to ask you about that 89 game, which is one of my favorite professional games I've ever seen, Brian.
Yeah, I really wanted to get into that because it's also one of my favorites. Talk about that 89 Grey Cup, but also talk about that team in 1989. A very interesting team through that whole season to get to the Grey Cup.
Yeah. Well, it was a special team. We were a pretty good football team all along, and then we got into injury problems, and we had really lots of guys hurt, and we always said, well, you got to play through the injuries. We had an event occur we were about 7-7, and we were playing BC Lions. We were listen to this. Now the other team was on their own 45-yard line. There were 7 seconds left in the game, and they were going into the wind. Now they got about 60 yards to go in the Canadian Football League, and so we got the game. Matt Dunnigan was the quarterback for the other team, and even we didn't think could throw it that far. So what happened was one of our best players had been getting a lot of fan noise about how he wasn't very tough and he wouldn't tackle anybody. So with the games, we had 7 seconds left. So what happens is they throw a bomb, and he goes up, and instead of going for the ball, he goes up and smashes the wide receiver. They call it pass interference. It's now on our 30-yard line. They drop back again. They throw a ball into the end zone, and another player, another defensive back, jumps up, pass interference. They get the ball on the 1-yard line. Dunnigan is going to run a sneak to his left. He fumbles the ball, and nobody knows where the ball is. The ball is laying on the back of one of the guards, and Dunnigan finally saw it, picked it up, and ran it in the end zone. We lose the game with 7 seconds to go, and that was. Everybody, we had played good football and whatever, but that game, everybody gave up on us. And everybody thought that the newspapers and whatever, that I should cut that player and send him down the road. But he was a good player. He just made a huge mistake and whatever. And so I didn't keep him, and he left him in there. He was an all-star free safety. So with that, a lot of the fans had really backed off of us, and they really weren't that much on our side. And going into the Grey Cup game, 2 games before that, we were terribly beat up. We had to play a backup quarterback at slot back. I had to borrow a running back from Edmonton. And lo and behold, we won that ball game. Went up and played Edmonton in the last game of the season with a whole bunch of injured players, and we decided not to play those players, even if we could have. We didn't want them to play hurt. We wanted them to be healthy for the playoffs because we'd already made the playoffs. They beat us like 50-25. And then the next week we were coming back to play them. Since we were, that's who we paired up in the first round of the playoffs. Now we come back up there, and we now have some of our big guns in there, and we beat them badly, and to make it to the Grey Cup. So that was a part of the Grey Cup, and then the Grey Cup. I mean, this was like I say, we kept it simple, and we had a heck of a game. We threw for 501 yards, I believe, and that game was voted as the best Grey Cup game in 100 years.
Yeah, that was an amazing game. Absolutely amazing game.
Yeah, and you move ahead. You ended up being hired by the Hamilton Tigercats, where, of course, you know, they were not very good when you got there. You take them to the playoffs in 2 of 4 seasons. You want to talk a little bit about your time in Hamilton?
That was at Hamilton was a very interesting thing. When I went there, we had a really neat owner, and he was a really good guy, and it was really a fun job. And you know, all of a sudden he had a misfortunate thing. He ended up with a divorce from his wife and lost all his money because she had the money. So what happened there was that a mafia group bought the team, and I'm going, oh my God! And it was the worst coaching situation I've ever been in my entire life. I mean, they wouldn't pay. I was a general manager as well. They wouldn't pay the bills. My phone was ringing off the hook because they thought I was the one responsible for paying the bills. So it was a disaster. It was a terrible situation, and we ended up. We came to blows, and basically that's about what it was. And I went in and I said, unless you do this, I'm out of here. And he says, that's okay. You're out of here anyway. So anyway, I was glad to get out of there, to tell you the truth, before I got thrown in the lake out there with cement shoes on.
Wow.
That was bad.
The next question I have is actually, this is one of my favorites. I actually met you last year. I was defensive coordinator for Iowa Barnstormers, and I actually had met you last year briefly. In 1995, I really got into arena football, and what became my favorite team was the Iowa Barnstormers.
Oh,
and I know, I want to ask you about, you pretty much, I mean, you again, you're the program builder. I mean, you started that, everything there from scratch. Talk a little bit about, starting that team, and talk a little bit about the tryout where you found a guy that was working in a grocery store. Talk a little bit about that. I decided to go back to the States. I kind of was, trying to decide whether to stay in Canada. I loved coaching in CFL, or about coming down to Canada. And it so happened that I'd been up there 12 years, and with my Social Security, I wouldn't have, if I didn't get back sooner or later, I wouldn't have enough quarters in, or whatever they call that, to get my full Social Security. So I decided I would come down to the States and then maybe go back up to Canada. So that's why I came back down. And the Arena League, I had they had somebody, Ray Yock was the guy. You guys were familiar with Ray Yock, I think. And,
yeah.
He was in the Arena League at that time, and, and he said, this is really fun, really having a good time. And he said, and I said, well, I think, I might like to do that. So somehow the team, Jim Foster, got a hold of me from, and they were building this new team with the Iowa Barnstormers. And I didn't know anything about arena football, but they were playing a couple of games over in Europe at that time. So I went over there and saw it, and my wife and I, and it was a fun deal. So I decided I would go. I'm from Iowa originally anyway, and it was in Des Moines, of course. And so I went in there, with a greenhorn, not knowing much about the arena football, but football is football. If you block better than the other team and you tackle better than the other team, you got a chance to win. So I went down and started this thing from scratch, and it was we ran a tryout, free agent tryout, and I had a guy named Terry Allen, who was a coach at University of Northern Iowa, called me up and said, "Hey, I got this kid." He said, "I think he's pretty good. He didn't play much in for us. We had a guy named Jay Johnson, so he played quarterback behind him. Jay was drafted, so he said he only played a little bit in his senior year, and then he hurt his shoulder, and he missed about 3 or 4 games then." And I said, "Well, send me a film." I looked at a film with him playing Western Illinois. And, he did a really, really pretty nice job. He had a strong arm and kind of one of those long arm guys. And so, and the problem is that I had some information on him that he wasn't very quick. And we brought him in, ran him in a 40, and he ran a 5.1 40. And so then we put him through all the drills, but he had basketball quickness. And I think everybody knows what basketball quickness is. It's like getting out of the way or getting open for a shot and whatever. And he'd been not only an all-state football player, but he was also the first-team all-state basketball player. So I talked to him and I said, "Hey, join us and we'll see what we can do." And he goes, "Well, I want to get in the NFL." I go, "Well, you got some work to do first." So anyway, that was Kurt Warner. He was sacking groceries for Hy-Vee grocery store, and that's kind of how that came about.
All right. You want to talk a little bit about the 95 and 96 Arena Bowl teams?
Yeah. Well, we it was pretty interesting because we were an unknown, and I always use simplicity, and we put in a very simple offense, and we had about 7 or 8 plays, about 3 or 4 running plays, and we were at that time running that read option, which was an outstanding play for us, especially down on the goal line. And Kurt could do that. He had the basketball quickness to make it work. So, and then I taught him to my contribution to Kurt Warner was to teach him how to throw off balance and release the ball quickly. I have a certain number of drills that I have done for years with that, and he picked it up. I mean, like unbelievable. I said, "Just Kurt, pretend you're in basketball and playing basketball, and we're coming down the floor, and you're on a fast break, and you're going to hit the guy to the side, to the outside. That's all we want to do. Just throw it to that guy." And he picked that up so quickly, and he was so accurate that, I mean, when people got him, and everyone that looked at him after that, they're going, "Holy mackerel!" He was. I mean, when he was playing with the Rams, he scored 4 touchdowns early in the season. They go, "Wow, that's great." He says, "No, it wasn't. I'm used to getting 10 touchdowns in arena ball."
Wow. Talk a little bit about your new league, the ADL Arena Developmental League. Talk a little bit about the your vision for that and things that are going on with that.
Well, it was it came out of the dark to me. I had gone over with the head coach of the Columbus Lions, Jason Gibson, and he invited me over about 3 years ago to put in his offense. His offense wasn't working very well, and so he brought me over, and in preseason he said, "I want you just to coach the offense. You just take it and coach it. So I went over, and I put my offense in. And, he won. That they had not been winning prior to that. And so in the last 3 years, I mean, he's made everything work. And so then he called me up it's got to be 3 or 4 months ago now, and said, hey, we're not happy with arena football with the league. There's all kinds of goofy things going on, people that are in the business that are making it a sad story rather than a nice story. And he said, would you have any interest in becoming the commissioner of a arena football league? I go, sure, I'd be interested in that because it would give me a chance to maybe fix some of these things that I see going on that are not pleasant. And, with teams dropping out, not playing games, and making just a mess of the whole thing. So anyway, that's kind of how it happened.
Yeah, and I mean, me and Brian have both had experience with that. I mean, you go to a team, all of a sudden you're not getting paid, or they don't market the teams. I mean, and the biggest problem is, like the AIF, the league they were in, teams aren't really vetted. I mean, what are you guys doing that's different than everybody else to just make sure that the guys that are coming are legit and have money?
Right.
So, well, I mean, I think that it's something that has needed to been done for years. And I think the way you guys are doing it's the right way to do it. And I'm very optimistic about the direction your league's going to go.
Well, Mike, here's what I think. I just hate to see that a lot of these young players and these people taking advantage of those kids and treating them like, in the end, dirt. Because they bring them in and send them out, and they don't treat them right. And it's just been a sad story to me. So that my goal is to make this thing work in a simplistic way. I don't think it's complicated. I think all you have to do is just be good people. And I think my experience in all levels of football will be very advantageous to me as I make decisions as the commissioner of this league. I know what needs to be done, and I'm not going to put up with anything that's not fair to the players or the owners or the other teams. I have stated this, that I want this to be the class league of arena football. I mean, I want it to be. The things that I'm looking at doing, the players, I want the players. I've been to a number of games since I took this on, and the players dress sloppy, and the coaches dress sloppy, and that's not football. I don't know what it is. It's not football. It's not the way we should play football. That's not the way we played in high school. It's not the way I played in college. I know you didn't do all these crazy things. Some of the other things that are going on between players before the game and so on, which happens in the NFL too. I don't think that's football. I want to get football back to where it was years ago when you shake hands with the guy and you walk back over to your side of the field and then you come out and kick his ass. And then after the game, you shake his hand. And if he kicks your ass, you still shake his hand and say, nice job. That's what I want to get to.
Yeah, very well said, and I think you're the guy that can pull it off. Brian, do you have any final questions for Coach Gregory?
No, I'm just I'm excited about the new league, and I'm excited to hear somebody talk about bringing things back to the way they used to be and making things more professional, and that's something that
right.
Really, we need to have, because as Mike said, I mean, him and I, we have been on the other side of it. I've been fortunate the last few years to be with good organizations, but at the same time, I've done this for 11 years, and I can say 9 of them have been very iffy at times. So, it's refreshing to see that something is being built, that it's being built the right way.
Well, I appreciate your thoughts on that, and but that's the way we're going to do it, and I'm excited about it. We guys, the interest that we have had, and it was so good for me to hear from you, Mike, on and give me a shot in talking to your owners. I mean, they're really nice guys, and they're class guys, and you're going to have a class football team. And I think the positive thoughts that we've had from a lot of teams on trying to build this story into the fact that it's going to be like old-time football in the fact that we're going to be gentlemen. We're going to be gentlemen. And, you know, I'm certainly not afraid to take somebody on that's not going to be a gentleman. And I think my hammer is bigger than his. So we're going to run it like a professional football team, football league.
Well, we will definitely be paying attention to how that goes. It was an honor to have you on the show today, Coach.
Well, I hope people had a good time enjoying some of the things I've said anyway. And but I'm excited about this new adventure, and I appreciate you having me on your show, Mike. And you always have a good show. You always have good people on it. And you had Dieter Brock on last week. I had an opportunity to work with that guy, the best quarterback throwing arm I've ever seen in my entire life. And so, Brian, and good to talk with you. And, well, we're ready to go.
All right. Also, I want to remind everybody our CFL Weekly Pick'em show, which is every Monday night, is myself, Brian Schmidt, Os Davis, former CFL legend Robert Grumman won 4 Grey Cups. Also, Dieter Brock will be joining us weekly, too, every Monday night, former CFL Hall of Fame quarterback. So I want to thank Coach Gregory again for coming in. So for Brian Schmidt, John Gregory, I'm Mike Goodpaster. You've been listening to The Grueling Truth, where the legends speak.